is I change it. Okay? So what is the value? Okay, so we got to figure out what the missing part is. So this really means this. That ln part means log with base of e. Okay? E is the answer part. This is the answer part. And they're saying, find the missing part. Okay? So which part is missing? The base, the answer, or the exponent? Exponent. Okay? So we did that yesterday and the day before. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things I showed you was the loop trick, right? The loop trick which helps you change to an exponent. So it's really e to what power equals the answer, e. Right? Changing it to an exponent like this. Okay? So what's the missing power? What power would make them equal? I thought I heard just one, yeah. Because isn't this, if it's no power, it's one, right? So that means the missing power is one. So I didn't put these sentence frames like I did the other day, but if there were sentence frames, it would say the answer because, right, the answer is 1 because e to the first power equals e to the first power. You don't have to do the sentence frames today. I did that because sometimes, yesterday I had the question, what's my answer? Well, it's the missing part, whatever the missing part was. If the missing part was the base, that's your answer. If the missing part was the answer, that's your answer. If the missing part was the exponent, that's your answer. So whatever the missing part is. Okay? All right, B. I'm going to change it. Okay? What's the missing part? Is the missing part the base? Is the missing part the exponent, or is it the answer? The exponent again, right? So how do we find? Use the loop trick. E to what power makes e to the 6th? 6 power, right? Okay. Missing power was 6. All right. Letter C. Log base of e 1 over e squared. Okay. Missing the exponent again. Loop trick. E to what power makes 1 over e squared? What power would give me 1 over e squared? So it'd be a negative, right? Let's start there. It has to be a negative because I have to make it a fraction, right? So it has to be negative. And then once it becomes negative, does it have a root or anything with it? No, so it's just going to be a negative 2. Yeah, it's just going to be a negative 2. E to the negative 2 equals 1 over e squared. So what is the missing part? The power, negative 2. Negative 2 would make them the same. Okay. Let's do letter D. Log base of e. Then you have, now I have a root. Okay, I'm missing the power again. E to what power makes the root? What power would give me the third root of e squared? Yeah, oh, it's going to be a fraction, right? I had someone in my first period say, squared, right? Isn't it squared? Yeah, but that's not the only thing happening, right? It's got a squared and a root. Doesn't that mean a fraction power? So this means 2 over 3. Well, to match that power, you would have a 2 over 3. So what's the missing power? 2/3. That's what I would need to make them the same. Okay? Letter E, do letter E. What's the missing power? What's the missing exponent? So you get E to what power equals 1 over E? What power would I need to make 1 over E? -1, right? Because E, the 1 over E just has a power of 1. So the only thing I need to do is just move it down. Take the elevator down. So the missing power would be -1. Okay? That's natural log. It's the same, it follows the same rules that every other log does. It just looks different. That's the question I get. What does ln mean? What does ln mean? It means a log. Change it to a log. It means a log. It doesn't mean anything different than it did on Tuesday and Wednesday. Okay? All right, so the next thing, properties. Now there's 3 properties. There's 3 properties. Some of this is on the notes, some of it's not. So if it's not in the notes, fill it out. So they're going to ask us to do 2 things. They're going to ask us to condense or expand. Condense or expand. How are we going to do that? We're going to use these 3 properties. First one is the product. Product means multiplication, right? And it definitely has multiplication. X times Y. That's condensed. Condensed means make it smaller, right? Take those 2 paragraphs and condense them into 1. That means make smaller. That's the condensed version. If we were to expand it, we would separate X and Y, but instead of multiplication, we'd have addition. Okay? When it's condensed, it has multiplication. When it's expanded, it uses addition. Okay? That's the big part. Addition goes with multiplication every time when you're doing these properties. Okay, same thing with a natural log. Natural log works too. Natural log works too, same thing. Okay? That's the first property. The second property, quotient property. Quotient property. Quotient means division. We have division here. X divided by Y. That's condensed though. How do we expand it? How do we separate them? We use subtraction. So division goes with subtraction. Addition goes with multiplication. Okay? So they're going to ask us 2 different things later. On the other side, they ask us to expand or condense. They ask us either expand it or condense it. So this is how we're going to do it, okay? That's the quotient property. And then the last one's the power. Power doesn't have division, subtraction, addition, all those. It's just the power. The condensed version had a power. The expanded version moved the power to the front. Move the power to the front. So how do you know it has a power? Is there something in the front? Or is there something up here? Okay, that's where the power hides. Okay? Same thing for natural log. Okay? So while you guys are finishing, write that down. Look at 2. Look at question 2. For question 2, are we expanding or condensing? They'll always tell you, but sometimes you got to read between the lines. So question 2, are we going to be expanding or condensing, and how do you know? Condensing, yeah. How do we know question number 2, example number 2? It says simplest form. What else does it say? It also gives away, that's one way, and what's the other way it gives? Single, right? That's like your English teacher saying, take those 2 paragraphs and condense them to 1, right? That's the math version of that. That means condense. Condense. Okay? So how do we condense? You use these 2 steps. I'll show you right now. I'll write them down right here. First step, we're going to use the power rule first. First step, we always, when we're condensing, we start with the power rule. And then the next step, we use either the product rule or quotient rule. That's the order we do. Start with power, then move to product or quotient. When we expand, we just go the other direction. Okay? Question number 3, we're expanding. Okay, so let's look at A. I got to use the power rule first. How do I know there's a power? This guy right here, right? Let's go right back here. Didn't we say the guy in front of the log, if there's a number in front of the log or anything in front of the log, that's the power. That's where the power hides. Where is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be with the power. So we got to move it back. So we got to move it back. That's the first thing we're going to do. So we're going to move that back. Z is supposed to be there, not there. Rewrite it. No more Z in front. Z is supposed to be the power for D. The other log didn't have a number in front or a letter in front, didn't have anything in front. So that didn't have a power. Okay, so now let's go to so which one are we going to use now? So the next one is either product or quotient. Which one are we going to use for this one? What does addition go with? Product. Multiplication, right? Didn't addition go with multiplication? We said addition goes with multiplication. So to put it back, we're going to change that plus to a multiplication. Okay? So we're going to say log, one log. We're going to combine them. And we're going to put multiplication. B times D to the Z power. Done. That's condensed. One log, everything is in there, multiplication in the middle because it was product rule. Okay. All right, let's look at letter B now. Power, start with the power. Is there a power that needs to move back? Yeah. What is the power? Move that back. Give it back to K. It was supposed to be right there with K, but it got moved to the front when they expanded. So this should say log K5. Sometimes I use parentheses just to separate everything. You don't have to, but minus log of Q. Okay? How do I combine those into one? What am I going to use instead of subtraction? Division. Division, right? So it should be one log with division instead. What goes on top, K5 or Q? K5 because it came first. Whatever comes first in math goes first, and then the second comes last. 1 log, powers are all moved back, we're done. Okay, letter C. Powers. Is there any powers we need to move back? Yes, 4 needs to go back to where it came from, which was up here with the 2. So it should say log of b, 2 to the 4th power, minus log base b of 2. I'm not done yet because I have 2 logs still. I got to condense them into 1. So what am I going to use to condense them? Division. Oops, I forgot to put b, log b. Here we can keep going though, because these are numbers. What is 2 to the 4th power divided by 2? Well, what is 2 to the 4th power? What is 2 times 2 times 2 times 2? Well, 2 times 2 is 4. The other 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. So it's really 16 divided by 2, which is also known as 8. Okay, that's simplified. We couldn't do that with the others because they were letters. We can't divide K and Q because we don't know what K and Q are. But I do know 2 and 2, so you do that, okay? Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is expand. Well, first of all, there should be 3 expansion problems, but one of them got cut off. So can you move that one to C? Either put it on the bottom, if you can't fit it, put it on the back of the page, somewhere on there. That one was supposed to be C, but it got cut off when I printed it out. I don't know why, the formatting. So that one should go on that. There should be 3 condensing problems and 3 expanding problems. Okay, we're not going to start with this one. This will be the last one, but I wanted you to make room for that question, okay? All right. So let's go to A now. So now we're expanding. I only have 1 log. I should have multiple logs. Okay? So first thing is, what is the answer part? 5x to the 4th. How are 5x to the 4th joined? Are they joined by multiplication or division? Multiplication, right? So how do we do expanding? You're going to do the opposite steps. First thing you're going to do is start with the product or quotient rule. And then last, you're going to do the power rule. Okay? So you're going to do the opposite. When you're condensing, you go power and then the other 2. When you're expanding, you go the opposite direction. So the first thing we're going to do is product or quotient. You guys said multiplication in between, right? Multiplication in between. That means how many logs? I need a log for 5, and I need a log for x to the 4th. So 5 gets a log, x to the 4th gets a log. How are they going to be joined? With what? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, division? Addition, because we said multiplication goes with addition. Okay? Last step, powers. Are there any powers that need to go to the front? Yeah, 4 here, right? 4 needs to move out to the front. So it should say log of 5 plus 4 times log of x. That's expanded. Okay? That's the opposite direction of what we just did on number 2. Okay. Letter B, it's condensed. We need to expand it. What am I going to use to expand it? Product or quotient? Quotient. Yeah, that kind of looks like a big subtraction sign, so that I kind of use that as a trick. It looks like even though it's not subtraction, it's division, right? But it kind of looks like a subtraction, so that tells me that I'm going to be subtracting over here. So the top gets a log. The bottom gets a log. In between is subtraction because subtraction goes with division. Powers. Powers need to move to the front now. Powers need to move to the front. To completely expand it, I got to move this power to the front. I got to move this power to the front. So you're going to get 3 times log of x minus 2 times log of y. Okay. All right. So when you're done, whatever's in parentheses should be like nothing with it. It shouldn't be a 5x or a 3x or an x squared. It should be bare bones. Same thing with y. Bare bones and nothing else in there, or else we haven't done our job. Okay? All right, last one, and then there's one question. I'm going to have you do a exit ticket, one question, and then we'll be done. Okay, so here we go. What's different about this one compared to the last two we just did? There's a couple things that are different. What's one thing? It's got a root, right? We haven't seen one with a root. That's one thing. What else is different? Yeah, we have on top and on bottom we got division, right? But then we also have multiplication. There's 3x, there's an x, a y, and a z now. So how many logs are we going to finish with? 3. Good. So let's set them up. Let's set those up. We got a log, I got a log, and I got a log. Okay. The first one is the x cubed. X cubed is going to get the first one because it's in the first spot. The next one is going to get the y because that comes next. And then the last one's the root. Right, so z squared third root. Okay. Now we got to decide how do we connect them? So how do I connect the first two? Log x3 and log y. How do I connect those? Using subtraction because they're being divided, right? X and y are being divided. Subtraction. Do I also use a subtraction between log y and log root? No, because those are being multiplied, right? Here's the thing though. You're right. But both of them are actually being divided, right? They're both on the bottom. So to show that, I'm going to put some big parentheses here. Anytime you have multiple things down there, you're going to show that. Okay? If it was only one thing, you wouldn't need the parentheses, but it's two things that are being divided. Powers. 3 moves to the front, right? X is now bare bones. Y didn't have a power to begin with, so it's already bare. Here's kind of not a trick question, but kind of a thinker. What power does the z have? Not 2. 2/3. Yeah, 2/3. Why 2/3? Because it has a power and a root. Oops, the other way around. It has a power of 2 and a root of 3. So that 2/3 has to come to the front now. That 2/3 here is going to go right in front. 2/3 times log of z. There you go. Now you're done. Okay. All right, not too bad. All right, so I'm going to give you one problem for red, one problem for yellow, and then we'll be done. So on the exit tickets, put your name on one side. The other side, you're going to do the problem, just like always. Okay, you can use your notes for this. It's not a test or a quiz. It just helps me out for tomorrow. Okay, so put your name on one side, and then on the other side, you're going to do it.